Hello, my friends. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you are new. My name is Lexi, and today is Mystery Monday. Mystery Mondays are where we diamond paint a mystery canvas, and I tell you about an unsolved mystery. This week, we're talking about the Enfield Poltergeist case, which I am so excited to tell you about because it is a case from England. I wanted to pick out a case from England because we haven't done one yet. All of the cases we've talked about so far have been from America. I'm from England originally, so I wanted to pick one from my home country. I also really like this case because it's creepy, it's weird, it's unsolved, it's baffling, it's one of the most perplexing paranormal cases out there. I'm not super big into ghost stories or poltergeist type stories, but I really like this one. And there have been a lot of TV shows, movies, books, plays based on this case. And if you've ever seen The Conjuring 2, it is based on this story. Last year, I believe either Sky or BBC put out a brand new drama series based on this, and I think there was also either a play or a series that came out with Catherine Tate in it, and so there's been a lot of new attention around this case at the last part of 2023, and so I wanted to go ahead and cover this one. So we will get into it in just a minute. So yes, I'm working on this Mystery Crystal Rhinestone canvas. Now, we have done a few squares. We did this one, and then two corners down here. I previously had no clue what this mystery canvas was going to be. However, I was kind of thinking this was like a rocket ship and there's like a star right here. I was wrong because some really smart people in my comments last week picked up on the fact that I think these are going to be gnomes. People were saying they could see 3 gnomes on this canvas, and I think they're right. And let me show you. So, see, I think this is his hat and his nose. And then down here, I think this is his beard and his feet. And then same thing down here, like some feet and a beard. So I think it is 3 gnomes. So I think you guys have cracked the case on this mystery kit. But we don't know what the rest of it looks like. So we're going to continue on and see what the rest of the kit looks like. I do have some popping drills, so if you see drills missing, that is why. So I'm going to pick a square. Let's do that right now. Got my little jar here. I'll link everything that I'm using down below in my description. Okay, we've got number 9. It is a 9, not a 6. That's how I write my 9s. That's this one over here, which this 9 is upside down. So, we'll go ahead, we'll get started on this, and then I'm going to switch to a voiceover. I have found, since I did a voiceover last week, it's much easier for me to diamond paint without talking, because then I'm faster, and I felt like the voiceover came out better because I wasn't distracted by the diamond painting. So, that's how we'll do it. So, I'll be back in a little bit. Okay, so the Enfield Poltergeist case. This case is a mystery. It's an unsolved mystery, and the reason that I say that is because nobody really knows to this day whether this was a real case of a haunting or if it was actually a hoax. So let me tell you what happened. The Enfield Poltergeist case is one of the most famous and controversial paranormal events in modern history. It's been described as the most baffling ghost stories of all time, and it took place in Enfield, a suburb of London, between 1977 and 1979. It involves the Hodgson family. So the Hodgson family was Peggy Hodgson, who was 47 years old at the time, and her 4 children, Janet, who was 11, Margaret, 13, Johnny, 10, and Billy, 7. They claimed to have experienced a series of terrifying and unexplained phenomena in their home. Their home was a council house, and it was located at 284 Green Street in Enfield, and this house actually still exists. It is actually occupied by a family today, and recently, because of some new attention that the case has received, the family that lives there has been interviewed, and they've said that nothing weird has happened there. They're very happy living there, and there's nothing weird. So anyway, back in 1977, these disturbances started in August, and what happened was Margaret and Janet heard knocking sounds in their bedroom, and they claimed that they saw a chest of drawers slide across their bedroom. And they called for their mom, and Peggy comes in, and she thinks they're just messing around, and she puts the drawers back in place, and she tells them, knock it off, you're just messing about. But then, after Peggy moves the drawers back into place, she sees them move herself. So they all get really scared, and they actually go to the neighbor's house. So the neighbors are called the Nottinghams, Vic and Peggy Nottingham. So Vic Nottingham and his wife, who is also named Peggy Nottingham. The Nottinghams, they call the police, and the police come out and they investigate, and a police constable actually gave a statement saying that she had witnessed a chair moving across the kitchen. However, nothing was done about this because the police ultimately declared it not to be a criminal matter. So the police couldn't help Peggy and her children. They just said, that's not criminal, we don't know what's going on here, and they left this family and did nothing about it. They couldn't do anything about it. So then, the Nottinghams, this is the neighbors of Peggy, the Nottinghams, they went to the Daily Mirror, which in England is a newspaper. And they said, can you please help us with this? Because there's nothing the police can do, and it's really weird. The family is scared. Can you please help us? So the Daily Mirror sent a photographer out there, and that photographer's name was Graham Morris, and he was 22 years old at the time. So Graham Morris was dispatched to the house, and initially he didn't see anything. He went into the house alone, and nothing happened. However, the family returned home while he was there, and he reported that once Janet crossed the threshold of the home, things started to happen. And actually what he said was all hell broke loose when Janet came into the home. Toys went flying, the kids were screaming, the adults were screaming. And he said that he started to take pictures as fast as he could. Now, back in 1977, he was using a professional camera, and it was the type where you had to let the flash recharge. So he had to wait some time between each picture, but he was trying as fast as he could to take these pictures. And he wanted to take a picture of all these toys and Lego and marbles flying around, and these items were hitting them in the face, and I think he even reported that he had a pretty big lump on his face from where he was hit with one of the toys. But when he went to get the pictures developed, you couldn't see any of the toys flying around. All you could see was the horrified look on everyone's faces. And he maintained that this really happened, and that as far as he could tell, nobody was doing this. Nobody was throwing anything around. This happened spontaneously, and it was not somebody doing this. It was an invisible force making all these toys fly around the room. So from that point, he was hooked, and he spent a lot of time at the Hodgson home over the next year and a half. He spent about 18 months there, and he spent days on end trying to capture what was going on in the home. And you can look it up. You can look up Graham Morris, and you can find interviews with him, and he maintains to this day that this really happened, and he insists that it wasn't the house. He claims that it's not an entity in the house that caused this, but rather that it was some kind of unexplained force or energy that was emanating from Janet. It was all centered on Janet. And I read one interview where he claimed that she would go to school and weird things would happen at the school. So it wasn't like it was something happening within the house, just the house. It was Janet. And I read one interview, I believe it was with Graham Morris, where he says he does not believe in ghosts and that he was more willing to entertain that it was some kind of scientific explanation, like some kind of energy force field that was coming from Janet rather than some kind of like ghost or I guess demonic type of thing. So unfortunately, the family really was noted to be in turmoil during this time, and the environment was really, really tense, as you can imagine. And it was just Peggy and her 4 children. Unfortunately, Peggy's husband had stepped out on them in 1977, not too long before all of this poltergeist activity had started. And what's really kind of sad about the story is that the case attracted a lot of attention in the media. So there was a lot of reporters that were flocking towards this and giving them attention, whether it be positive attention or negative attention. So you already have this family that is in turmoil. The kids aren't doing very well. They're very scared. They're very stressed out. The environment is very, very tense, and sounds like it was kind of toxic potentially. So you have all this media attention, and then you have all of these paranormal investigators sort of ascending on the house because they're interested in what is going on, because there are all these reports of these paranormal phenomena going on. So one of the key figures in the investigation was Maurice Gross, and he was a member of the Society for Psychical Research, or SPR. Now, this is an actual nonprofit organization, which I believe still exists in the UK. They are a society of people that go and investigate psychic and paranormal activity. So he was one of the key investigators in this. And he also investigated with another person by the name of Guy Leon Playfair. So the two of them, they spent a lot of time in the Hodgson residence. They documented and they investigated the reported phenomena for a long time. So Maurice Gross, he described the family as being in a bad state. And he said that everybody in that house was in chaos. So like I said, they were in turmoil. He reported incidents of toys, plates, and shoes flying around. He said furniture was upturned. Now, both Maurice Gross and Guy Leon Playfair reported curious whistling and barking noises coming from Janet's general direction. And I believe that the photographer had also reported strange voices coming from Janet. Now, Playfair, he wrote a book. He wrote a book called This House is Haunted, The True Story of a Poltergeist, and that was in 1980. And he maintained that the paranormal activity was genuine, and he claimed that an entity was to blame for the disturbances in the home. However, what is very confusing and what kind of adds to the mystery in this case is that he often doubted the children's veracity and wondered if they were playing tricks and exaggerating some of these events. So that really muddies the water, and it doesn't really... It really just puts a whole shadow over the case. He maintains in one breath that, there's this entity in the house, but then he doubts a lot of what he saw. Now, at one point, they did set up a video camera and they caught Janet bending spoons and attempting to bend an iron bar. They also had observed Janet banging a broom handle on the ceiling and hiding the tape recorder. And they also observed that when she would have these voices come out of her, that the voice would display some of the same habits that Janet had. So, for example, she had one voice that came out of her that had a habit of just suddenly changing the topic. And that was a habit that Janet had when she was speaking normally. So there were some things that really kind of made them think that this was a hoax, that it was the children pulling pranks and exaggerating their stories. And so it really shed a lot of doubt in the minds of these investigators. Now, there was a point where both Janet and Margaret, the two older children, admitted that they were pranking the journalists. And so at that point, Gross and Playfair compelled the girls to actually retract their confessions. So they wanted Janet and Margaret to take back their confessions where they admitted that they were just pranking the journalists. So they were trying to hide that fact, and it ended up that these two investigators just became like the laughingstock, and they were mocked by other researchers and investigators, and people just thought that they were easily duped and that they were trying to cover up the fact that they were easily duped, I guess. Now, like I said, there were a lot of different investigators that came to the Enfield house, and two others that are pretty interesting are Milburn Christopher and Ray Allen. So, Milburn Christopher was actually an American stage magician, and he briefly investigated the Enfield home, and he actually failed to observe anything that could be called paranormal. He was dismayed by what he felt was suspicious activity on the part of Janet specifically, and he later concluded that the poltergeist was nothing more than the antics of a little girl who wanted to cause trouble and who was very, very clever. Now, Ray Allen was a ventriloquist, and Ray Allen visited the home, and he actually, from his perspective, concluded that Janet's voices, specifically the male voices, were simply vocal tricks, that Janet was able to force her voice to make these male voices that people had heard. Now, of course, there are so many skeptics out there that say that none of this was true, and still to this day, there really is no resolution or explanation. I think most people lean towards it being the children were playing pranks and making it up. There are a lot of challenges to the authenticity of the Enfield Poltergeist case. Some argue that the children were just staging the events for attention and that the investigators were being deceived, or perhaps the investigators knew that it wasn't true, but they wanted it to be true. Some of the photographs that were taken during the investigation were really inconclusive. For example, this photograph of the child levitating could obviously just be the child jumping in the air. It's just one picture of the child in the air. So this did not provide clear evidence of any paranormal activity. And then, of course, there was a lot of evidence to show that the children were making things up, like Janet bending the spoons and tapping on the ceiling with the broom, those types of things. They did have some psychic investigators and mediums come into the home. Now, one couple came in. They were sort of the most notable, Ed and Lorraine Warren. They were paranormal investigators, and they claimed that the Enfield Poltergeist was the result of demonic activity, and that added another layer of mystery and fear to the case. But nobody ever really landed on a solid explanation, and to this day, there's just a lot of controversy and debate on, was it a hoax or was it a real haunting? So, like I said, the Enfield Poltergeist case remains controversial, with believers pointing to the extensive documentation and eyewitness accounts as evidence. But then the skeptics, on the other hand, maintain that the events were either exaggerated or entirely fabricated. And in the end, the disturbances just seemed to fade away on their own. And then eventually the Hodgson family just moved out of the house. And I think that is the most perplexing part of it to me, is that the occurrences just faded away. This might just be the movie viewer part of me, but I would have expected some kind of big resolution. You know, usually when you watch movies like this, you'll see some sort of dramatic wrap-up. You know, for example, they might have an exorcism, or there might be some kind of big resolution that makes everything go away. And in this case, that didn't happen. There was it just kind of, you know, tapered off, and that was it. Now, the Enfield Poltergeist case really did have a lasting effect on the paranormal community, and like I was saying at the beginning of this video, it has inspired a lot of books and documentaries and TV shows and plays. Catherine Tate has been in a play recently, and that's why there's been a lot of attention, especially in England, on this case. And there was a feature film, The Conjuring 2, was all about this case. And it continues to be a topic of debate among people who research these things, and as well as skeptics. I will admit I'm a skeptic about this kind of stuff, but it still interests me because of all of these eyewitness accounts. Could it have been these children were just so smart and they easily tricked adults? Were the adults just so willing to believe it that they let themselves be deceived? Or did this stuff really happen? So it remains a mystery as to what really happened. But what I will say is that to this day, the Hodgson children, who are now all adults, are still adamant that the family home was haunted. So, Margaret Hodgson, who I believe is now 59 years old, there was a recent interview in 2023 because of the resurgence of the interest in this case. Let me read you a quote from her. She said, "We didn't imagine it. It really happened, and it was terrifying. I don't care what other people say. This is a true story about what happened to my family. It still affects us. It changed our lives." So let me know what you think down below in the comments. Do you think this was all a hoax? Do you think there's some truth to it? Do you think it's all true? Do you think that it was a ghost, or like the paranormal investigator couple said, do you think it was a demonic type of energy? Do you think there's some other type of energy, like the photographer said, some sort of scientific explanation for it? Do you think it was all Janet? Was she some kind of master manipulator? Was she able to, come up with these male voices? Was she the one playing all the tricks? Was it all the children in on it together? Or was the house really haunted? What do you think about the Enfield Poltergeist? Let me know. I'm very, very interested to know. Okay, here we go. We are all done with this section. I think I missed one there, actually. Okay, so we've worked on, it looks like the second hat, maybe, for one of the gnomes. And it's looking really cute. The only thing I'm kind of worried about is there's so much of this silver color that I'm scared it's going to kind of wash out their little gnome beards. Especially this guy down here. It kind of looks like it gets washed out a little bit in the background. But It's coming together. So we got another cute star here, and I like that it's a pink star. It's kind of cute. So definitely having a lot of popping drills. These drills are really tight on here on this canvas, but it's very, very blingy. Just felt another drill pop out there. I think I'm gonna have to iron the back of it or something to make sure they stick. This is double-sided tape on this canvas, and it's not the most fun to work with, but it is very blingy and very shiny and sparkly in the light here, so I do like that. But anyway, let me know what you think about today's mystery story. Let me know what you think about the canvas so far. Thank you for joining me on another Mystery Monday, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!